scripture, Colossians 1:11 to 20. It is page 155 in the New Testament section in your pew Bibles, if you'd like to follow along. May you be made strong with all the strength that comes from his glorious power, so that you may have all endurance and patience, joyfully giving thanks to the Father who has enabled you to share in the inheritance of the saints in the light. He has rescued us from the power of darkness and transferred us into the kingdom of his beloved Son, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For in him all things in heaven and on earth were created, things visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or powers, all things have been created through him and for him. He himself is before all things, and in him all things hold together. He is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, so that he might come to have first place in everything. For in him all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell, and through him God was pleased to reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, by making peace through the blood of his cross. Keith? Hop on up here, dear.
Well, thank you, Connie, for reading that foundational passage, one of the classics, a triumphant song of victory that Paul is writing about Jesus. Thank you for that singing. Precious Jewels was also in our primary department. And when Allison Krauss recorded that a few years ago on one of her recordings, I remember thinking, wow, that is a golden oldie. That took me back and really pleased to hear that this morning. It's good to be here with you. 2 Sundays in a row that we could be here. Boy, mark that down. Hopefully that can happen again sometime. And I will take this off. If you were here last Sunday, you know the story behind the cap. Iowa colors, which are good colors to wear this morning, I think. Nebraska colors, not so much. I expected they might have a difficult time, but not like that. That's a different subject. There are no less than 10 songs in our Voices Together hymnal that claim Colossians chapter 1, that claim this passage for their foundation. And I recall reading in the congregational profile of the Sugar Creek Mennonite Church a phrase that kept showing up over and over again, looking through life and looking at the church through the lens of Jesus. Let Jesus be the foundation of everything we do, which fits this passage this morning. Do you realize it was almost exactly 1 year ago that we candidated here to be pastors? Where does the time go? It seems like a long time ago. And yet I remember it kind of like it was yesterday. There were some difficult questions to answer, as there are with all churches today. This is a challenging time for the church. And one of the questions is, how do you decide what's important? You have to pick something and stand by something. You can't just be flexible on everything. How do you decide? And if I recall correctly, one of the answers that I gave was, I just stole it from your congregational profile. Well, let's just look at the world through the lens of Jesus and use the words of Jesus to decide what our standards are going to be. This is a little different of an outlook on life than what our culture has. What did you think when you saw the title of the passage this morning, or the message this morning? Winning isn't everything, it's the only thing. Were some of you thinking, does our pastor really believe that? I do not. Just to clarify, but that's a pretty common saying, and one that we often quote. Vince Lombardi was given credit for this, but he didn't say it. It was a coach from UCLA, I think, Red Sanders, somebody like that. Vince Lombardi said, winning isn't everything, but making the effort to win is. But according to this passage, I don't even know if that's true. So we have this collision between what our culture values and what this passage says, that Jesus is the image of the invisible God. He is before all things, head of the body, the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, and as it came out in this passage, first place in everything. And that's a little different sometimes than how we look at life. We like to win. We want to be on the winning side. I'm going to do something this morning that I have waited for years to do in church. This came in the mail to me, and maybe some of you got this as well. I just pulled it out of our mailbox. It's this lucky number thing, and you pick off things, and if you have a winner, then you call the number and you pick up one of these prizes. This happens all the time. I get this stuff all the time, and I've always said, without opening it ahead of time, I'm going to go to church and play this game knowing that I'm going to win something. So I'm going to check this out right now. Here are the possible prizes: $25,000 in cash, $1,000 in cash, an ATV, a 75-inch crystal UHD TV. That would overwhelm our apartment. I don't even know if I could get far enough away to watch that. Or a smartwatch. If I have any matching numbers across here, I'm going to win one of those prizes. So I'm going to do this thinking for sure that I'm going to have a winner. So, that one doesn't match at all, the top one. Well, there goes my chance for 25 grand. Okay, the next one, 777 on one side, 777 on the other side. Look at that. I only got to the second one and I got a winner already. Say that again? Yours was the same? How many of you had 777s? See, I knew I was not the only one to play this game. What did you win? Anybody get the 25 grand? You know, sharing with your pastor wouldn't be a bad idea if you did. So I do have a winner here, which I knew was going to happen. I know how these games are played. If you read the fine print, it looks like out of 60,000 prizes, 59,996 of them are the smartwatch, valued at $29.99. You have to go to the car dealership in Mount Pleasant to get it. And I'm guessing you're going to have to withstand a pretty strong sales presentation if you do that. I have no need of that, so I'm probably not going to go down there. But this idea, plant the idea in your head that you're a winner and you've got a valuable prize, and that gets people's attention. And it's kind of a valuable marketing technique. Now, I'm telling you this morning that winning is not everything. It's not the only thing. In fact, there are times when it's not even important. If you are in athletics in high school, those of you who are, I would advise you not during a timeout when your coach is yelling at you to get your act together and play a little better. That would not be a good time to say, but coach, our pastor says in church that winning isn't really all that important. I probably wouldn't do that if I were you, because we like to win, and there are times when we want to. If you come to visit us in New York, and let's say you stop off in Buffalo, that's where our children live, and we spend a lot of time there, come and visit us sometime. We'd love to have you. We could walk down the streets of Buffalo. However, I would advise that there's one thing you probably shouldn't do. Don't go up to somebody you don't know on the sidewalk and say, wide right, wide right. Because in 1991, when the Buffalo Bills played in the Super Bowl, if the field goal kicker would have made a field goal in the last seconds of the game, Buffalo would have won that first Super Bowl. But it was wide right. And that term has embedded itself in our minds, wide right. In fact, Jim Nantz even said it during a football game once when a field goal try went wide right, and he said, there's another painful reminder of wide right for our Buffalo fans watching today. After that game, that was the first Super Bowl. Forget the next three. That was the first one that we almost won, and we had never been there before. So the entire city was still in a bit of a celebratory mood, even though we didn't win. And there was a rally in Niagara Square, and the team came and showed up, and everybody was cheering for the team, even though they had lost. And certain players had been scheduled to come and address the crowd and thank them for their support and all that stuff. Scott Norwood was the name of the kicker who missed that field goal. And about halfway through that rally, the crowd started asking for him. We want Scott. We want Scott. Even though he had lost the game. And everybody was kind of befuddled. Are they serious about this? And I remember him stepping up to the microphone and saying, I have never felt more love than I feel right now. I was not scheduled to speak today. That was a painful experience. Thank you for giving that to me. I have a professor friend from Houghton College who's a football fan. In fact, we went to a number of different games together. And he also does a lot of social analysis about this whole thing about winning and losing and the effect of sports on our society. And he said that we gain something more valuable from losing that game than from winning that game. Now again, that was prior to losing the next three, where we didn't find it all so valuable to be on the losing side. But he felt like it was actually better and more edifying and did more for our character to lose than it was to win. I actually had a personal experience with this. I was in a bowling league, and we had this ongoing tournament all throughout the year. Each night you were matched up with somebody else, and if you scored better than them, you gained a certain number of points. And I just happened to get really lucky that the people I was matched up with didn't bowl very well on the nights they bowled against me. And I ended up at the top of the standings at the end of the year. And so there was this championship roll-off on the last night of bowling. The top 5 bowlers, number 5 played number 4, and then the winner bowled against number 3, kind of like they do on TV. And I was waiting at the top of the pyramid for the whoever worked their way up through. So the championship match was me and another guy. This other guy liked to win. When he made a good shot, he would jump up and down and yell, and if he didn't make a good shot, he'd stomp, and it's always the pin's fault, you know, it's never your fault. I tried to be, at least I was older by this time, I tried to be a little more level-headed. There was a time when I wasn't. In fact, on the church bowling team, Leonard Roth had to sit me down and say, just have fun. You're trying to win too much. Just have fun. So I tried to learn that. So I was a little bit more even-keeled than he was. So we had this match. Now, spoiler alert, I did not win. I lost the match. But something interesting I noticed started happening about 2/3 of the way through the match, that most of the people that were watching were pulling for me to win. Okay, Keith, this is a place now to make a good shot. You could do it right here. And I didn't, but that was beside the point. And I remember at the end of the match, after it was over, and the winner was pretty demonstrative about his winning, and I congratulated him. And I remember a lot of guys coming up to me. Good try, we were pulling for you, you didn't quite make it, but boy, we sure would have loved to seen you win. And I remember walking out of there as a loser, thinking, I really feel like I won today. I had the support of friends and family, and maybe there's something more important than winning. There's a bit of a destructive myth that we have in our personal lives, and that is that we can live however we want and do pretty much whatever we want. That's kind of how our culture is built. Free enterprise. And if I win, that's good, but you know, if I win, somebody else probably has to lose. We're built on winners and losers in our culture. And this text does not encourage that. This text talks about living in community, about service to others, because it is Christ who wins in all things, and sometimes because Christ is the winner, we don't have to be. There is a challenge in our churches today, and I am well aware of it, because of free enterprise and the choice that we have to worship wherever we want to. It becomes tempting to want to mold the church, the beliefs of the church, after my personal beliefs. Mine are correct, mine are right. The church also needs to believe that and practice that, and if they don't, then I don't know if I'm going to stay. I'll just go somewhere else. And that's part of the freedom that we have. And we're seeing that today in Mennonite Church USA. There's a lot of splintering going on. There was a big one that just happened recently. One of the largest conferences has decided to leave Mennonite Church USA, and that's going to happen in all denominations. The Methodist Church is also facing this, and I understand it, and I understand the difficulty of trying to, in a society that practices freedom of choice and freedom of destination, I understand the challenge of trying to get a group of people together. It's not easy to do. And unfortunately, we have a lot of splintering going on, and I'm a little frustrated at the lack of ability to compromise. And instead, there's a lot of digging in. We are going to hold fast to this regardless. And I'm not sure that's what this text is teaching us and telling us. Now, I confess that I want to be part of a winning church. Let's fill the pews and let's have our special music singers sing an offering song so people give a whole lot more. And let's just have success on every front. I would like that. At the same time, I have been in churches like that. And I have been tempted to lead churches with my point of view as what wins and what loses rather than what's really following the way of Jesus. And it's not always the right way to go. Rick Warren is a very well-known pastor who did the Purpose-Driven Life series. Some of you might have studied that as a community. Very effective. Over the years, it's kind of been interesting to watch his faith journey. He's been a little bit discouraged by what he sees is the church focusing on some of the wrong things. And so he has taken to quoting the words of Jesus to try and bring us back into a more central following Jesus type of way. And he gets a variety of responses. Sometimes when he sees something that he feels is not the way of Christ, but rather the way that a certain church has just chosen to go, he will quote a verse from Scripture, probably from Sermon on the Mount. That's usually where a lot of the controversial ones from Jesus appear. And he'll quote this verse, and he gets one of two responses. One response is, who said that? Well, Jesus said that. Oh, well, maybe we better think about what we're doing here. That's one response. But just as often, there is a second response. And that response is, yes, we know Jesus said that in the first century, but it doesn't apply anymore. We're in a different culture. What he said in the first century is not going to work in the 21st century, and we need to go this way and not that way. Now, I admit that I don't know of any teaching in our Anabaptist history that suggests that the words of Jesus were only for that time and that they don't apply today. In fact, we say the opposite. We believe that Jesus meant what he said for all time. What's that book one of the classes is studying? What if Jesus was serious? That's a good Anabaptist book. That's how we believe. I don't see anything in this passage that Paul is writing that would even hint that this is temporary, this is only for this time, and in the future it's going to be completely different. That is not what we are seeing here. And so to truly say that we are going to have the foundation of Jesus, and that is going to direct everything we do, that could be a challenge. And it might collide with what our culture feels is important. And it might put us with odds against some other people. Pastoral leadership is indeed very important. Howard Hendricks was the speaker at a Christian Camping and Conference Association meeting that we went to when I was director here at Crooked Creek back in, I think it was the year 2000. He was on the staff at Dallas Theological Seminary. I tend not to share many of the views that faculty at the Theological Seminary in Dallas do, so I wasn't all that thrilled to see him as a speaker, but he was outstanding. One of the best I've ever heard. In fact, his speech that night had a little bit to do with leading me on to perhaps getting back into the pastorate again. He tells the story of a church council meeting, and by the way, I apologize for missing council meeting Wednesday night. I was pretty well shot. Wednesday was a full day, so I said, Connie, you're half of this pastoral team, you go. And it's a good thing I didn't go with her because she went at about 6:45 and didn't get home till 10 o'clock at night. And I remember thinking, that's either the longest church council meeting of all time, or she stayed after to talk to some people. And it was the latter, which is a good thing. And I think she had some good conversations. Anyway, at this council meeting, Howard Hendricks was serving as a consultant. And he was sitting in the meeting, and they weren't getting anywhere. They were just going around and around and butting heads. Well, a telephone call came in for the pastor about midway through the meeting, and the pastor had to get up and has spent considerable time away from the meeting. And so they carried on with the meeting, and Howard Hendricks reports that suddenly things seemed to go a whole lot better. They started to exchange ideas, and they were listening to each other, and they were being constructive in what they were talking about. And after the meeting was over, Howard Hendricks pulled aside a church council member and says, "What happened halfway through this meeting when the pastor stepped away and suddenly you were all much more efficient?" And this council member said, "That's how it goes. His ideas, he believes in winning. His ideas have to be number one. He says, say anything you want to and challenge me any way you can, but we're not stupid. We know better than to do that." Well, I don't know what kind of pastors you have here. We actually had a conversation about this with Pam. We don't vote at church council meetings. Have you all noticed that? The pastors don't vote. That's by design. We want you to be making foundational decisions for the congregation, and we'll do what we can to play that out. And if there's ever a time when we feel like you're going down the wrong path, yeah, we'll share that. But I'd like to think that we listen a little better than what that example has given us. Howard Hendricks also tells another story. He was the chaplain for the Dallas Cowboys back in the day when Tom Landry was the coach and they were winning Super Bowls then. Roger Staubach was the quarterback who at one time I think held the record for the most fourth quarter comebacks. I don't know if he still does, but 23 times he has led the team in a fourth quarter comeback, 14 times just in the last 2 minutes. So Howard Hendricks asked one of the offensive linemen, "What happens? What does Roger Staubach say in the huddle to get you guys all fired up so that you somehow pull the game out and win?" And this lineman says, "I don't know. All I know is that when he steps into the huddle, we believe we can win this game." Now here we are talking about winning again, which I just said is not that important. But in the context of accomplishing something, what you say when you step into the huddle makes a big difference. So Howard Hendricks asked the question, what happens when you step into the huddle? And maybe that's a good place to leave this morning with that question. What happens when you step into the huddle? Do you reflect what's here in Colossians chapter 1, verses 11 through 20? A lesson from last Sunday is that God has provided salvation for us. If we can get to the point where we feel accepted by God, there's real freedom there, and we can be grateful for his gift to us. And we can respond without feeling like we have to win, because if we are saved in God's sights, we've already won. Nothing else we've got to worry about. And so we can live. This is a great lesson from Colossians chapter 1. We are entering into our Advent season, very special time of year. And this is the time when we celebrate one of the greatest cosmic events of all time, this Jesus that we read about here in Colossians chapter 1, verses 11 through 20, makes an appearance as a human being. And so we celebrate that. And I wish that your Thanksgiving and Christmas can be a blessed time. Amen.